Unfazed by the situation, he kindly invited me for a coffee chat at a nearby cafe. Driven by curiosity, I accepted, making it clear that I would pay. It was important to me that he knew I didn't expect anything from him. As we settled with our coffees, he began to talk, his voice tinged with a hint of regret. "I owe you an apology, Zoe," he admitted. "I was too stubborn to reconnect with your mother after she made her decisions. Now, I realize I've missed out on being part of my only granddaughter's life." As I stirred my coffee, avoiding eye contact, he continued, "So, why reach out now?" He sighed, the years visible in his gaze. "I want to make things right. I'd like to support your education if you'll allow it." His proposal took me by surprise. Attending college had always seemed like a distant dream due to financial constraints. "I need to discuss this with my mom," I replied. Later at home, I shared the encounter with my mom. She remained silent for a while, pausing from her dinner preparations. Finally, she wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and said, "Zoe, I've been angry at your grandfather for many years, but perhaps it's time to forgive. If this is what you want, I'll support you." Starting at Preston University felt like entering a new world. Armed with secondhand books and modest clothes, I felt out of place among peers who casually chatted about luxury vacations. Nervously clutching my notebook, I took a seat at the back of my first class, hoping to blend in. "Is this seat taken?" a friendly voice asked. I looked up to see a guy with a warm smile. "No, it's all yours," I responded, making room. "I'm Logan," he introduced himself, offering a handshake. "Zoe," I replied, touched by his easygoing nature. "So, Zoe, ready to conquer the world of finance?" he asked with a playful sparkle in his eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be," I managed to smile, feeling slightly more at ease. University life was a whirlwind of new concepts and intense studying. Despite feeling like an outsider, I was determined to excel. One day, after a tough lecture, I heard some classmates planning a study group. I hesitated, then asked if I could join. "Sure, but it's at the cafe on 6th. It's a bit expensive," one girl said with a dismissive look. I stiffened, aware of the financial barriers that still stood in my way. "Thanks, I'll see if I can make it," I replied, though I knew I wouldn't. Despite these challenges, I thrived academically. My hard work didn't go unnoticed. One day, Mr. Arthur, my finance professor, complimented me on my latest paper. "Zoe, your insight was impressive. Have you thought about an internship? Some firms value sharp minds like yours," he encouraged. Surprised, I confessed my doubts about lacking experience or connections. "Sometimes, talent speaks louder than connections," Mr. Arthur reassured me, inviting me to discuss further during office hours. That conversation with my professor was a pivotal moment for me. It sparked a belief that perhaps I truly had a place at the university. Energized, I began applying for internships, each application fueled by a growing hope that slowly overshadowed my initial insecurities. As the semester unfolded, I found my groove and made friends like Logan, who appreciated my sharp humor and readiness to assist with challenging assignments. One evening, while walking back to my dorm, my mom called. "How's my college girl?" she inquired, her voice always soothing my frazzled nerves. "Hey, Mom. It's tough, but I'm keeping up," I replied, a smile lighting up my face as I shared my modest triumphs. By the time I reached my senior year at Preston University, I had evolved from a shy scholarship student to the top of my class in investment analysis. As graduation neared, my grandfather, whom I hadn't spoken to much beyond brief updates and holiday greetings, invited me to a celebratory dinner. We met at an upscale restaurant, the kind with a dress code and an intimidating array of silverware. "Zoe, my dear, you've done exceptionally well," Grandpa Evan said, his eyes sparkling with pride as he hugged me.
"Thanks, Grandpa."
"I couldn't have done it without your support," I responded, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. Over dinner, he regaled me with tales from his finance days, each story imbued with wisdom and nostalgia. Then over coffee, he leaned in with a serious look. "Zoe, I've been thinking. I'd like you to consider joining my firm. You'd start in a high position, overseeing new investments. What do you say?" he proposed, searching my eyes for agreement. I paused, stirring my coffee thoughtfully. The offer was alluring, a fast track to a high-flying career. Yet, something inside me hesitated. Grandpa, that's an amazing offer, but I think I need to make it on my own first. I want to prove to myself, and to everyone else, that I can succeed without special treatment, I explained. Grandpa Evan's smile widened. That's exactly why I'm proud of you. You have your mother's spirit, he said warmly. After graduation, job offers arrived, but not from the high-profile firms that pursued my classmates. Instead, I accepted a position at a respected, though less glamorous, investment company, a place where merit mattered more than one's background. The work was challenging, involving intricate financial models and demanding client portfolios that required precision and creativity. The steep learning curve was exhilarating, and each successful project further validated my decision to forge my own path. Months passed, and I began to establish myself. Initially skeptical, my colleagues now sought my counsel. One day, after sealing a particularly complex deal, Logan, who had joined the same firm, congratulated me. "See, I told you back in freshman year, you were going to rock the finance world," he said, grinning. As the year concluded, I felt not just accomplishment, but fulfillment. I wasn't merely surviving, I was thriving. The bridge between my past and my future was solid beneath my feet, each plank a testament to diligence and perseverance. My life, once a steep climb, now felt like an exhilarating ascent. When Vincent burst into my life, he was like a meteor, bright, dazzling, and impossible to ignore. Our paths crossed at a friend's rooftop party under a canopy of twinkling lights with a vibrant city humming beneath us. "Hey, you're blocking the view," he teased, approaching me by the railing. I turned to see a guy with a grin and eyes full of mischief. "I believe the view can be shared," I responded playfully. "That's fair," he chuckled. "I'm Vincent," he said, extending his hand. "Zoe," I replied, the handshake sparking an unexpected connection. We spent the entire evening chatting effortlessly about everything from our favorite novels to our most embarrassing childhood stories. It was easy to open up to him, and for the first time in a long while, I found myself completely letting go. When he asked me out at the end of the night, I eagerly agreed. Dating Vincent was like being swept up in a whirlwind of adventure. He was spontaneous, fun-loving, and incredibly caring. Despite his wealthy background, which we seldom discussed, he was down to earth. A few months into our relationship, he suggested I meet his parents. I felt nervous, aware that these were influential people in society. "You'll love them," Vincent reassured me as we drove to their grand mansion one evening. "They're really looking forward to meeting you." However, the reality was far less welcoming. The dinner took place in their sprawling, perfectly styled home. As we entered, I immediately sensed a change in atmosphere. His mother, a regal figure with piercing eyes, greeted us with a cool demeanor. "Mother, this is Zoe," Vincent introduced me, his smile wavering in the cool air of the opulent dining room. Zoe," his mother remarked, her tone smooth yet icy. "Vincent tells us you work in finance." How quaint. I clenched my jaw at her patronizing tone but managed a polite smile. "Yes, I've been with Hollinger Investments for some time now." And before that, I was cut off as Vincent's father interjected, his curiosity tinged with disdain. "Vincent mentioned something about a cafe?" "Yes, I worked part-time at a local cafe during college," I replied, striving to maintain my composure despite their judgmental undertones. An awkward silence followed until his mother abruptly stood. "Well, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the dessert." She left the room without another word. Dinner continued with strained conversation, mostly driven by Vincent in an effort to bridge the uncomfortable silence. Leaving that night, the relief was palpable. The following weeks were challenging. I encountered whispers and disparaging looks from family and friends at events. I was always seen as the outsider, the waitress turned analyst, forever defined by my past rather than my present. Then came the ultimatum. His mother invited me for tea, a meeting that turned out to be a cold, calculated confrontation. "Zoe," You're a smart girl, she began, her eyes assessing. You and Vincent come from two different worlds. I'm prepared to offer you an incentive to end this relationship amicably. I was stunned by her audacity, momentarily speechless. You want to pay me to leave your son? I finally asked, disbelief mixing with rising anger. It's for the best. You'll never truly be one of us, she stated bluntly. My response was firm and resolute. Thank you for your hospitality, I said, standing up. But Vincent and I will decide what's best for us, not you. The decision to get married felt as natural as turning the next page in a book you couldn't wait to finish. Vincent and I were deeply in love, ready to begin our lives together, united by our feelings and undeterred by external pressures. Before we could set a wedding date, Vincent's mother insisted that we meet with their family lawyer to draft a prenuptial agreement. In the lawyer's lavish office, she outlined the terms with a clinical detachment that unsettled me. It's nothing personal, dear, she said, her voice smooth and emotionless. It's just our way of protecting our assets. You'll have yours, and Vincent will have his. I understand, I replied, maintaining a composure I hardly felt. I don't want anything that isn't rightfully mine. I'm marrying Vincent, not his wealth. The lawyer took diligent notes, while Vincent's mother offered a tight, almost surprised smile. Very sensible, she remarked. Despite the awkward start, Vincent and I opted for a simple wedding. No grand affair, no society pages, just us and our shared commitment. On a brisk morning, we drove to City Hall for the ceremony. Sitting in the car, waiting for our turn, Vincent grasped my hand. You sure about this? He asked softly. Doing it like this, without anyone else? I squeezed his hand, reassuring him with a smile. I've never been more sure of anything. It's about us, not them. We don't need a crowd. He nodded, though his furrowed brow betrayed his concern about his parents' reaction. My parents won't like this, he admitted. I know, I said gently, but it's not their decision. And who knows? Maybe they'll come around eventually. The ceremony was brief, yet beautiful in its simplicity. We exchanged rings in front of a small group of other couples, the only witnesses to our union. When pronounced husband and wife, the joy and relief we felt were profound. After signing the official papers, we stepped out into the sunlight, officially Mr. and Mrs. We celebrated quietly at a quaint seaside restaurant Vincent had reserved, raising our glasses to new beginnings. The backlash from his family was as expected, cold shoulders and harsh words at any family event we attended. His mother was particularly bitter. You've made your bed, now lie in it, she hissed during one tense dinner. Vincent's father was more resigned, but equally disappointed. Vincent was caught in the middle, trying to mend the growing rift between me and his parents, but each attempt seemed to only widen it. At one gathering, his mother cornered me in the kitchen, her voice a venomous whisper. You think you've won him, but you'll never really be part of this family, she warned. Facing her calmly, I replied, I don't need to win anyone. Vincent chose me, and I chose him. That's enough for me. Maybe one day it will be for you, too, she scoffed, turning away to hide a slight tremor in her hands. The conflict was far from resolved. For years into our marriage, I had made a name for myself as a talented investor. Despite my professional success, my in-laws continued to view me with suspicion, spreading rumors that I was merely spending their son's money. It stung that Vincent rarely defended me against such accusations, always rationalizing his silence by pointing to his precarious position within his father's company, which he was expected to inherit. I don't want to rock the boat, he'd say, which hurt deeply. The distance between us grew as I navigated the challenging waters of our personal and familial dynamics, striving to maintain my independence and integrity in the face of ongoing skepticism. I dedicated myself to my career and to making a meaningful impact wherever possible. My efforts led me to join a charity that supported underprivileged children, and I contributed $380,000 to their initiatives. This commitment not only fulfilled me, but also earned me an invitation to a high-profile charity dinner at an upscale hotel, a gathering spot for the city's philanthropic elite. Vincent and I arrived together, But upon entering the grand ballroom, the cold, dismissive stares of his parents were palpable. They ignored me, treating me as if I were invisible, while Vincent uncomfortably avoided discussing our strained relations. As the evening unfolded, it was time for speeches. My grandfather, a revered figure in the foundation, was the evening's guest of honor. The presenter first acknowledged my grandfather's visionary leadership and contributions. Then the focus shifted to the major donors. And we extend a special thank you to Mrs. Zoe Thompson, whose generous donation of over $380,000 has made a significant impact on our projects this year. The applause that followed was loud and heartfelt, but it was abruptly interrupted by a shrill outburst. Vincent's mother, red-faced and furious, stood up and demanded a microphone. "This is preposterous," she shouted, her voice echoing through the ballroom. "I must expose the truth." The room fell into stunned silence as she continued. "Zoe is nothing but a leech. That money isn't hers. She's using my son. She's a gold digger, and I won't let her fool anyone here." The crowd's eyes, filled with curiosity and judgment, turned towards me. My face burned with embarrassment and hurt as she hurled her accusations. I looked to Vincent for support, but, to my dismay, he hesitated, glanced at his parents, and walked towards them, leaving me isolated in the crowd. As I stood there, fists clenched and heart pounding with a mix of anger and humiliation, a sudden calm descended upon the room. My grandfather stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, may I have your attention for just one more moment," he announced, his voice commanding silence. Everyone's gaze shifted to him, filled with respect and curiosity. "Zoe, please join me up here," he said, extending a hand towards me. Nervous, but trusting him completely, I made my way to the stage, feeling every eye on me. As I reached his side, he took my hand and turned to face the audience, his presence reassuring. "I stand before you tonight not just as the chairman of this foundation, but as a grandfather." The young woman standing beside me, "Zoe, is my granddaughter, and I know her better than anyone else here," he declared, causing a collective gasp to sweep through the room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my in-laws' shocked expressions, my mother-in-law's mouth agape in disbelief. It was a dramatic revelation that none, especially them, had anticipated. "Zoe has been accused tonight of dishonesty, of being a gold digger," he continued, his tone firm yet tinged with disappointment. "Let me set the record straight. Zoe grew up in humble circumstances, yes, but she has faced more challenges by the time she was a teenager than most face in a lifetime. Zoe had transcended all obstacles through her unwavering dedication and persistent effort." The room fell into a respectful hush as everyone listened intently to his words. "I supported her education financially, but that was the extent of my assistance," he explained. "Her subsequent successes are solely attributable to her own perseverance, intelligence, and ethical standards." Turning to face me, he continued, "Zoe, your achievements are truly remarkable, and I couldn't be prouder. I want everyone here today to understand that after I'm gone, Zoe will inherit not just my wealth, but also the duty to carry forward our cherished philanthropic legacy." The applause that followed was heartfelt and loud, celebrating a man who had just publicly vindicated his granddaughter's honor with such fervor. People rose to their feet, their applause reverberating against the majestic walls, a vivid contrast to the chilly standoff that had just taken place. My mother-in-law, unable to confront the supportive crowd, quickly exited the room, closely followed by my father-in-law, both visibly embarrassed and defeated. Vincent, who had remained quiet throughout the evening, finally approached me, his face a mix of regret and confusion. He seemed about to apologize or make an excuse, but I could not face him this time. I walked past him, head held high, unwilling to pause and listen to his words. The pain was too profound, the betrayal too cutting. His actions had shown me exactly where I stood in his life. The divorce proceeded swiftly and without incident, thanks to our prenuptial agreement and the fact that we had no children. I moved into a modest rented apartment, a space that was entirely my own, free from the oppressive shadows of expectations and scorn that had loomed large in my previous residence. One day, as I sorted through some old documents, my phone rang displaying my mother-in-law's number, a reminder of a chapter one had decidedly closed. Curious yet wary, I answered. "Zoe, darling," she began, her tone unusually sweet. "I've been reflecting on everything that happened, and I think we started off on the wrong foot. Why don't you come back? You and Vincent love each other, after all." Her words felt heavy and disingenuous. It was evident that her change of heart was not driven by genuine remorse, but likely by my newly acknowledged inheritance, which had seemingly enhanced my worth in her eyes. "I think you're mistaken," I responded, my voice calm despite the turmoil inside. "There's nothing left for us to discuss. Please, don't call me again." I hung up without waiting for her reply and blocked her number, a small yet significant act of setting boundaries. Months later, I learned through mutual friends that Vincent's family business had collapsed, and their unsustainable lifestyle had forced them to downsize significantly. While I took no joy in their misfortune, it served as a stark reminder of how deceptive appearances can be and how fortunes can change swiftly. A few weeks later, I visited the charity foundation my grandfather supported. As I entered, he welcomed me with open arms. "Zoe, I'm so glad you're here," he greeted. We sat in his office discussing my new apartment and job, and I realized how much I had evolved. The challenges strengthened me. "Grandpa, I think I'm ready to take on more responsibility with the foundation if you're still willing," I ventured, feeling more confident in my path. "Nothing would make me happier," he responded warmly. With my painful past behind me, I looked forward to a future filled with opportunities, ready to shape it as I deemed fit.